Hi everybody! It is about 12:30 on Friday the 11th of January 2019, and I've just had an appointment with my fertility consultant. So just like, wow, I'm a little bit overwhelmed maybe about everything that they've just said. So um, they got my blood results back, and my follicle stimulating hormone and my luteinizing hormone are both within like normal range, below 0.5, but my estrogen levels are really high. Well, not really high, but higher than they need to be for fertility treatment to take place. My estrogen levels were like nearly 1,400, and they need to be lower than that for them to do the egg collection process. So they said I've got two options. I can either have some injections that are a little bit like Zoladex and will cause a bleed, or I can take progesterone. Obviously, I'm really progesterone intolerant, so progesterone's not ideal, but I have to take progesterone because of my womb lining anyway. So that kind of made that decision easy because it was already planned that I had to take progesterone. So I've got to take it for 7 to 10 days, and then on the second day that I have a bleed, I will start my IVF treatment, which means I'm probably going to have like a little while in hospital. I was going to get called back in next week to have an appointment with the nurses to get taught how to do my injections and to get all my supplies and do the consent forms and things. But I don't think she quite anticipated how ill I get with progesterone. And I was like, I'm not going to have capacity to sign that consent form, and I'm not going to be in a place where I'll actually be fit to be able to attend the appointment. Like, I'll be too unwell psychiatrically from the progesterone. So they're going to do that later on today, and then all the medication is going to get sent to my mum and dad's, and then my mum and dad are going to bring it into the hospital to me. When they looked at my ovaries, they said that I'd got good egg reserves, and then when they did my blood test, they did an anti-Malarian hormone, I think it was called, and they said normal reserves. I think they liked, in people my age and my fitness and everything, they like to expect about 20 to 30, a reading of 20 to 30, but my reading was 38.9, so that's really good. It means that I've got good egg reserves, and they told me that they can freeze my eggs for about 10 years. The final thing that they said they've got to do is, because I've had pneumonia recently, I have to speak with the anaesthetist to see if like obviously when they give you an anaesthetic, then they suppress your breathing rate a bit, and so just to check that my lung capacity and everything's okay for that in terms of the anaesthetic and the pneumonia combined. And then I got to go back in half an hour for a counselling session. So yeah, it's all getting very real and happening very quickly now. I'll update later. Bye everybody. It turned out that today ended up being a really long day at the clinic. We left my house at about 10:15 this morning, and we didn't get in until like 6:15. So it was a really long day to be in appointments. I had loads of appointments. So after my last update, I had a counselling appointment, which was interesting. It wasn't really like any sort of counselling appointments or therapy or anything that I've had before. I didn't really know what to expect, but it was okay, it was good. It was just a one-off session, and it was just kind of an open space for me to talk. So I ended up talking about like how I was tired and frustrated about communicating between different professionals, and how everything like felt out of control for me at the moment, because actually it's out of control of like my actions. Like, the doctors are telling me what medications I need to take and when I need to take them, and it's like depending on my hormones. But we looked at the fact that whilst when I have the fertility and if I take the progesterone, that's going to be a really difficult time for me emotionally, and I am going to feel really out of control, that actually I can take a lot of control now and put things in place to try and make that time when I'm going to be out of control as good as possible. So like delegating things and talking to professionals now so that they know that everybody's on the same page with the plan, and so that
like people can take a bit more responsibility. For example, like the injections, if I can't do them myself because of how psychiatrically unwell it's made me, that the nurses will be able to give them me and monitor my doses and things like that. So that was really good to look at that. And we also looked at two other things which I felt were really good and I wouldn't have thought of. She looked at my fears about treatment and about the future, and we looked at the notion that it was really difficult for me at this time, and like there's a lot of people that are my friends and people my age have never been through this, and so it's quite a time where I could feel quite alone, and that's okay. And we also looked at the fact that although I feel out of control, I'm actually really in control because it's me that's making the decision to have the hysterectomy. Although it's based on my medical needs, like actually I could say no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have my eggs frozen. I don't want to do this yet. I'm not ready. And it could get to the stage where that choice gets taken away from me, like if other things develop. So I am taking the control and saying actually my life is so horrendous with PMDD that I'm choosing to give myself an opportunity of a future and to have a hysterectomy. So in some respects it is my choice, but it's obviously not something anybody would choose to voluntarily do at my age, I don't think, unless they had very strong opinions or they had something wrong with them. It's not something that I would choose in the sense of I want a hysterectomy. It's something that I know is the right decision for me. So we looked at that, and then we also looked at the fact that like I desperately have always wanted children, and we talked about the fact that although I want children, I'm able to put my own needs and wishes to give birth aside and actually have the best interest of that unborn child at heart, and say actually if I was to bring a child into this world in the situation that I'm in now, that child perhaps wouldn't have the best start in life. And so we looked at the positives then in that situation, and of all the strength and wisdom and situations that I've been in that have strengthened my character and how I can use that going forward in life. And actually we looked a lot at drawing on my strengths and how I've got through things before and how I can get through this. So I've been through bad times before and I can get through this, so it'll be fine. And that this is actually, although it's a really difficult step to take, it is actually a very positive step in my journey. Like it's something that I feel optimistic about and that I think will enhance my future longer term, even though it's really difficult in the short term. So that was really good, but it was emotional, and I did shed a few tears in there, which I didn't think I would, and I came out and I just wanted to burst into tears, but I didn't. After that, because I might not be in a fit state to do the consent forms, because if I've had the progesterone then I won't have the capacity, we did all my forms with the nurses. So I had another appointment at 3:30. In between I went and got lunch with my mum, which was nice. Then we came back and I had some bloods taken. I had to give some like urine samples and things, and then went to see the nurse and we filled in all the consent forms. And I got given my schedule of what medications I'm going to take and when and what days I'm going to have scans. And I got we ran through how to take the injections. Then they took some details and they're going to send all the injections out to my house. And then they did my observations. So they took my blood pressure, my pulse, my respiratory rate. Then I asked a few questions in the nurse appointment where we were doing the consent forms and they were giving me my treatment regime. And the nurse said, oh, just bear with me a second and I'll go and check with the doctor. And then the doctor called me back into her room at 5 o'clock. So we waited around again. And the doctor said, oh, I hadn't quite realised that you were still on the estrogen. So that's going to be why you've got a high estrogen level. But that means that it gives us another option of things that we could try before giving you the progesterone. Obviously, I might need to take the progesterone anyway because of my endometrial lining. So we're back in limbo again. I am currently, the gynecologists are going to talk to each other because that's always good. So the fertility gynecologist and my consultant gynecologist are both going to speak to each other. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, my biopsy results will be back on Monday and we can come up with a plan and I can start treatment. Otherwise, it'll just be a waiting game again for the biopsy results to come back. So it'll either be Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday, hopefully. Wednesday at the latest, I think that'll be 10 days. And then once that's come back, they will know whether I need to take the progesterone or not. And we'll be able to come up with a plan, like a three-way plan, rather than me being in the middle and having information coming from two different professionals about the same course of treatment, but with different an outlook. So if we can all communicate, that'll be really good. Because there's like 3 options now of what I can do treatment wise. So what I could do is I could stop my add back estrogen, stop my add back testosterone, and stop my tranexamic acid, and that should induce a bleed. And then when I have a bleed, I could go to the clinic, be scanned, and then start the hormones for my fertility treatment. But when I come off the add back estrogen and the testosterone, I'll probably be quite poorly and be back to how I was pre-PMDD diagnosis and treatment. Option number 2 is that I could come off the testosterone, add back estrogen and tranexamic acid, and I could take some injections for 10 days, and that would automatically induce a bleed into me, in which case then I would start the treatment on day 2 of the bleed. Or obviously I'm still coming off the hormones, so that will probably still make me ill. And then option number 3 is the original option that we had, which was to take 10 days of progesterone and then on day 2 of the bleed to start to take the hormones for my treatment. I personally am verging on saying let's go with option number 3. Although the progesterone will make me really poorly, it's guaranteed that it's going to work. There's no ambiguity there, like the progesterone will work and do its job, and then I can start treatment and everything's done. Whereas if I go with options 1 or 2, if I go with option 1, I might still have to do option 2 or option 3 because I might not have a significant enough bleed. If I go with option number 2, then it could be in a situation where I have the fertility treatment and going to get the eggs, and then I still have to take the progesterone on top afterwards, before I can have the surgery from my clinical gynecologist point of view, which would then mean being ill whilst I'm off all the hormones and while I'm having the fertility treatment, and then taking the progesterone and being ill even more. So part of me just says, just get it out of the way, just get it started, get it finished and do it. But I'm going to talk to my gynecologist hopefully on Monday and we're going to sort that out. So I came home and I literally just fell asleep. I got in and fell asleep. And then I had a little bit of a cry because although I know that I'm doing the right thing for me personally, like the right thing is often the hardest thing. And although I know it's going to be good for me long term or longer term, like short term it's really difficult, and there is so many emotions flying around and so many like unanswered questions and things are so out of control. So yeah, I did have a little bit of a cry. I felt a little bit emotional, and yeah, it's going to be okay. Just get through the weekend and it'll be fine. Night, guys.